Hello everyone, how are you doing? Hope you're having a great day so far. Welcome to another video. Today is a more relaxed kind of video. I'm going to be talking about this book, Creativity Incorporated by Ed Catmull, with Amy Wallace also helping write it up. It's a very interesting book. I had it in my to-read list for quite a few years now, ever since I was still working at Arctic. I remember Guilherme talking about having read this and finding it interesting. And it is indeed interesting, has a lot of lessons learned that can be applied to anyone running a company that relies on creativity, pretty much. So game development, anything related to media of some sort. So the book talks about Ed Catmull's journey, and you might know Catmull if you're into computer programming. That's where I first learned about the name Catmull. Was because of that. He was involved in computer graphics research earlier on in the 70s when there were no home computers really available, only big systems at big labs. He was already doing some research into different kind of computer graphics, early lighting models and stuff like that. You can find some papers with Catmull signature behind it. The book tells a little bit about that story, about his setup, how he was always interested in making movies with computers, but the technology was not there yet. And eventually he ended up at working at Pixar, where they were trying to do actually hardware, creating hardware, so computers, sell computers to work as systems to do heavy graphics for. So that was the original intent of Pixar. Eventually they pivoted into creating their own movies, and they became more prolific in storytelling and bringing the creativity out of making their movies. And they learned a lot of lessons. They have a very unique culture, from what it says in the book. There is this mantra called "the story is king" that is known from Pixar, that whatever you do, you should be doing to make sure that the story is as catching as possible, that it is compelling, that you shouldn't be showcasing technology, you should be telling a good story. If you have a good story, then people will like the movie regardless of the technology behind it. That's one of the key ideas behind it, and he explains quite well why this is imperative and how they came to this realization. And it came pretty early on. They have a few other cultural artifacts of Pixar that are also very interesting, that he shares, and he explains in depth about why they came to be and why they were so important, and why he took some of those things into Disney when they merged with Disney at some point. Talks about the brain trust group, the importance of candor, which is another fancy word for saying being honest with each other, not just with each other, but with yourself as well, and making sure that you do the best for the story and for the project and not for your own ego. That's a very important lesson. And also on the importance of everyone being able to stop the line at any point. Like if they see something is wrong that should be improved, anyone should be able to step in and not rely on a hierarchical system to figure out solutions for the thing. Anyone should be able to resolve the problems. Everyone should be able to talk with each other. So it talks a lot about these kind of issues, which is really important for a lot of companies that still have this hierarchical way of doing things, thinking that it helps them get results while it actually hinders them a lot, especially when you're dealing with creativity involved. It can stagnate and demotivate people from working on the project. So there are a lot of issues around it that Pixar firsthand learned how to cope with, and they built this system to deal with it. It's a very unique company, has a lot of principles that can apply to other creative industries. As I already mentioned. the problem is that some of those principles are not applicable to all kinds of, like, because of the uniqueness of Pixar themselves. It's not very easy to apply the same principles to another company, because the company will invariably be different from Pixar, working on another field or working on something else. So it has a lot of good concepts behind it, but it would always have to be adapted to making sure that other companies also strive on creativity and build really good products, not just mediocre, average ones. It was one of the things that actually made me think a lot. Like, they strive for the story always being so good because they kind of need to be #1 movies when they put out the movies. Otherwise, they don't have enough financing to keep all of the team that they would need to make these kind of movies. So they always battled very hard for that. And from what Ed says in the beginning, they leaned a lot on money from Steve Jobs, like taking loss for many years while developing the company until they figured out the way to make good things that would make them enough money to self-sustain the company. Which is another very interesting thing. Not all companies have the reliance of, a benefactor that believes in that they can turn it around and make something profitable out of it. A lot of investment or a lot of investors have this very strict deadlines where either you meet the milestones that they have laid out for you, or you're getting cut, and they cut their losses or try to sell you off to someone else who would rather take the risk on that. So hard to take these measurements and apply them to other startups. That's the main bottom line that I wanted to talk about on this point. But it was still very interesting, and also a lot of comparing notes I had with working at a company that has creative things behind it, parallel with the creative games industry as well. A lot of games strive on creativity. Well, some don't. Some is just boring mechanical work. But if you really want to make a very good game, you have to appeal to the creative aspect of your creators. But there are other industries that also these ideas or these concepts also apply to, not just the games industry. Games is just the seemingly biggest industry where it also makes sense to apply it to. I also had a lot of thoughts of how this compares, how running a company like Pixar compares to creating a demo. Of course, the dimensions are completely different. Running a demo is a very small team. Running in this big company is a huge dimension, but it's interesting to see that how the importance of the storyboard, nailing the storyboard, giving openness for people to find their own solutions, how you need to make sure that honesty is one of the pillars behind the project. Otherwise, you end up getting stuck working on a project that you don't believe on anymore. So yeah, it was very interesting to reflect on all these things. So a very good book. There was also a very large segment on Steve Jobs as well. So if you're interested in the character of Steve Jobs, beyond the stuff that you usually read about him being ruthless dictator and pushing people beyond what they should, and that those kind of stories that bubble up, this book talks of a more humanizing side of Steve Jobs, more accepting and positive version of him from the one that I've been hearing about. I do have the biography book on Steve Jobs as well, which I never bothered reading. I'm curious how it aligns with this. But yeah. Overall, interesting book. I'm curious how biased this is towards the point of view from management side. From Catmull. I wonder how the people who worked on certain projects at Pixar that got cancelled, for example, how they felt about the process that Ed talks about here on this book. If they also saw it the same way the leadership at Pixar sees it, or if they felt like they were set up to fail, or that they couldn't make it, and that it was the structure that didn't allow them to push through the idea that they wanted. So those are some little things that were left in the back of my head that I would like to know a bit more about, because all stories always have multiple sides to it. It's not just one side. But yeah, that's an afterthought. Overall, I did like the book, and I think it's Pixar is definitely a reference in it's the leading animation company. Ever since their inception, they've been the leading animation company. There are not that many other animation companies out there. Definitely not the size of Pixar, so definitely a big reference. Maybe on the Japanese market there might be some big players that I'm not aware of, but know the movies, but don't know really the company status out of it. But yeah, good book, do recommend it. What about you? Did you know about this book? Have you read it before? Any opinions that you would like to discuss with me? Feel free to put it on the comments below. Hope you found this review interesting. And that's it for this video. See you next time. Bye bye everybody. Have a great day.